If you are watching us from the last home you'll ever own tonight, consider yourself lucky. Same goes for anyone ready to buy a slice of the American dream. But if you're among the millions trying to sell, this was a very bad day. The National Association of Realtors reported the worst month-to-month drop in existing home sales since they started keeping track in the late 90s. And compared to last year, closings are down more than 25%. So if there is a sign in your yard tonight, is there anything you can do beyond hoping and waiting? Nightline's John Donvan went looking for ideas in tonight's Realty Check.
These two words on the American front lawn, do they now have the ring of a prayer, a plea to the market gods? Get me out of here. Now that we're hearing today about a 27% drop in the number of homes sold last month compared to June. 27%. That is terrible news for anyone who has been counting on or driven to selling the family house. Because with the exception of a few markets like, say, Las Vegas or Phoenix, where prices fell fastest and hardest, we are not, says economist Dean Baker, anywhere near done with this yet.
It's going to take a long, long time in some of these markets in, say, Florida, where you had really big bubbles. Those prices are not going to come back anytime soon.
So if there's somebody whose financial planning is based on their house price coming up in value soon, you're saying maybe they should come up with another plan.
Exactly. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to expect that prices are going to go back to the levels they were at 3 or 4 years ago.
Baker was ahead of most economists in spotting the great American housing bubble, so we were curious for his take on some of the innovative ways that Nightline has seen Americans trying to weather the downturn. Among them, well, if you must move but cannot sell, there is something called a home tending company that will send people to live at very low rents in your otherwise empty, otherwise non-selling home, like this one near Salt Lake City. Gina Blair was living here for only $650 a month. The only catch being,
I have to keep it clean. Every single morning I get up and I go through a routine of making the beds, wiping down mirrors, sinks, watering plants, trimming things, making sure that the yard's immaculate.
all in the hope that someone would finally buy it after more than 2 years on the market. The idea behind home tending is simple, once you hear it put this way by the woman who runs the company.
Because of security. I mean, you hear in the news all the time, these homes are getting broken into, they're getting copper ripped out of the walls, appliances stolen.
Gina got 8 months in the house before it finally did sell, possibly in part because she was there. Dean Baker's take on it.
We have a lot of vacant homes in the country, and certainly, where you have bank-owned properties, it's to their benefit to have someone in there who will keep up the property.
Or what about renting out a part of your home to help cover housing costs or living costs in general?
We thought, what are we going to do with the space? We've got plenty of space upstairs. We don't need it.
A few years ago, the hottest reality shows on HGTV were all about buying and sprucing up houses.
I think the sink needs to go.
Now this program is one of its most popular, called Income Property. This woman named Daria was one of the people featured. She was actually spending money to convert her basement into a rentable apartment.
You would benefit a lot from having somebody here and having that income coming in. So the idea got a lot more appealing as the longer we were here.
The logic is straightforward, but the rental market sometimes is not.
Nationwide, there's a record vacancy rate for rental units. So in most areas, it's not going to be easy to find a tenant.
You're just going to be competing against too many other landlords.
Yeah, you just have to deal with open eyes. You might occasionally have 2 months, 3 months between tenants, so it's not a guaranteed income.
And what about simply walking away? That starts to look pretty tempting when your mortgage is $390,000, but the value of your home has dropped to something closer to $300,000. The facts of Peter Safronoff's financial life right now.
I've been effectively unemployed for over a year. I've had to resort to taking my Social Security.
He's reached the conclusion that being foreclosed upon is his best option.
Rather than live month to month worrying about my survival, I have decided that the better course is to walk away from this home.
And he is working with a consulting firm called YouWalkAway.com, co-founded by Chad Rule.
Obviously, this has a negative repercussion on their credit, but they're willing to take that because they're not going to use their credit to go buy another home. They'd rather save this money, put it towards savings, put it towards another investment, and recover financially.
Many Americans are looking at this option, often in combination with what is called a short sale, where the bank buys the house back at market value and the owner gets nothing. except away from the nightmare.
I think it's a perfectly reasonable option in many cases. People are often underwater mortgages in a way that there's no way they could ever hope to get equity in their home. The idea that they would just stay there and, in effect, pay more than a house is worth. Suppose you owe $400,000 on a house that's worth $300,000. That's the same thing as walking in and paying $100,000 too much for a home.
But here's another option, one that Baker himself has been advocating. Create a system that lets people who lose their homes to the lending bank stay on in the house as renters.
They would have the option to stay there as a renter for up to 5 years paying that rent. So what it does is it gives them security in their home, and it also, from the standpoint of the neighborhood, keeps the home occupied.
Not exactly an inspiring vision of the home ownership that is part of the American dream, but that dream takes a down payment, one that 25 million unemployed or underemployed Americans will not have for a long time, if ever. I'm John Donvan for Nightline in Washington.